Hey, how you guys doing? I'm going to be demonstrating some updates on ECUViz, the project I've been working on. For starters, if we go on GitHub on my page here, you can find this project on my page, where I'm going to be posting a lot more about documentation, instructions, and different things on adding chassis, ECUs, and different engine types. I won't get too technical on this. I actually been working on a particular project, and I thought it'd be great to incorporate this particular chassis that's become very, very popular in the United States. I would say it's probably one of the most imported cars right now, being the Toyota JZX chassis, particularly the JZX 100. People literally daily drive these cars, and they're very popular, very stout cars. With that being said, I did have to document everything, and these cars are very unique. These cars have like pre-CAN bus systems, and I would say in comparison to like a RX-7 or even an E36, a little bit more difficult to follow wiring. So what I did is translate a lot of the documentation from Japanese to English, and if you guys are curious, I'll put it in the description. Pretty much took this entire document and annotated everything that was pretty much important, and was able to produce something like this. The reason why this even matters is, if we go over to my notes, from an image like this, these are practically all the chassis to engine harness connectors that would interface with even a custom engine harness that somebody may make. And as I did that, I found myself having to pretty much document that. As seen here, these are the different pins that I took note of and the things that I felt were essential to wiring a standalone engine harness. And mind you, the whole point of this tool is to retain OEM functions, OEM working cluster functions, things like a working tachometer, reverse lights, speedometer. I've seen a pattern of too many people wiring things with switch panels incorrectly, just very poorly. And the whole point of this project is to pretty much promote good wiring, good practices, and there's no reason to pretty much defeat some of the great OEM features. That's one of the reasons why this particular chassis is imported so often in the United States, is because they have so many great street comforts and creature comforts, and I see no reason to get rid of those things. If the car comes with AC, try your best to keep it. This is all opinionated, but not everything has to be a race car, and that's the whole point of this project. Anyways, I'm going to show you some updates I made. One of the cool things I added was chassis options. So as you can see right here, we have the Series 4 RX-7 selected, and we have a ton of different chassis options available. Wiper control, alternator control, clutch input if we wanted to wire up something like a two-step switch, and things like coolant temperature to the cluster. You can select them as you build your harness. As you can see, we have a couple new chassis added. In this one, we'll be highlighting the Toyota JZX 100, Chaser Mark II, Cresta, and as you can see, it does change. There are a lot more different options available, and let's kind of just build something, and I'll kind of walk you through my thought process on how I use the tool and how it's very helpful to me. So for starters, we have this one called the main relay bypass. One of the features I'll be adding is required chassis options. This is pretty much going to be required if you're going to be wiring in a standalone ECU, as it allows the fuel pump circuit to open on a Toyota chassis such as the IS300, GS300, JZX 100. Air conditioning is nice. This summer has been pretty rough on me, and why rip that stuff out? So let's take that. Check engine light control. Standalone ECUs are able to determine certain faults on sensors and things like that, and you can emit it to pretty much produce a check engine light. In this case, don't feel like I need it. It's whatever, so let's not run with it. Fuel pump speed is something that was very common among the 80s and 90s chassis, particularly Japanese ones, to pretty much preserve fuel pump life. Some people will go with keeping it, but whenever you're running like a big, you know, Hellcat pump or whatever, most people get rid of it, so we don't really have to do that. Speedometer, particularly for factory manual chassis on a JZX 100, the speedo sensor actually comes off of the transmission. On the automatic JZX chassis, it pretty much uses the speedometer on the ABS sensors, very similar to an IS300. In this case, let's just assume that we have a manual chassis, so we'll select that. And then obviously reverse lights, we want that. In the state of Massachusetts, we need that to pass state inspection, so why not? Power steering pressure switch can be very useful to create idle bump situations, and this is really nice, so you actually have soft steering throughout the car. This is very common on a lot of different vehicles. RX-7s and things like that also have power steering switches. So in this case, we want to keep that so we can have the best drivability on the street and we don't look like clowns in a parking lot. So let's select that here. Over here, we have starter control. This is one of those things that is another kind of mandatory chassis option. On a car like a RX-7 FC, for example, the starter circuit is pretty much on the body harness, so we don't have to worry about incorporating that into our engine harness. On a car like the JZX 100 or the IS300, the starter circuit lives on the engine harness. So this is something that we want to reincorporate back into the harness if we're building one, for example. So we'll select that too. Now, we have a ton of different ECU options. I can go all out crazy and make a 13B swap, you know, JZX. Most people are just going to be keeping the Toyota JZ engine in here anyways. So let's go with the Haltech Elite 2000, one of the ECU options here. And how about we just pick a, you know, a Toyota 2JZ VVTi. If we hit the update preview button, within a matter of seconds, it's going to produce pretty much a lot of those chassis functions that we talked about with default auxiliary and analog functions. If I click export to file here and click this image here, we can actually analyze this diagram, and as you can see, it's very well broken down and split up. So let's zoom in the blue section, if my computer decides to cooperate. So we'll just give that a second to load up. So the blue is pretty much our ECU. And obviously this is such a large image, so depending on the computer that you have, you just need to let it render. And we have things like, a lot of these are 13B sensors or GM sensors, but our crank angle sensor and all of that, the basic engine functions. Really, I'm not going to highlight all those things in this video as I talked about in the previous video, but I'm going to talk to you guys more or less about the chassis options that we talked about. So for example, the main relay bypass is one here, and pretty much all it does in order for us to bypass it is we just ground it out. So it shows us that circuit here, that this F26 connector would get grounded out like so. So it shows the link on how it works. For example, we have our tachometer signal, which would go to the ECU. Very simple. Let's go over to another one here, speedometer. Obviously, it's nice to know what speed we're going at. So obviously, we have it showing the different inputs and outputs associated with the speedometer, alongside with the switch 12-volt source that controls the speedometer. So as you can see, we have 12 volts, and we just follow all throughout the diagram, and pretty much it will show us where that all goes. So in this top left corner, you can see my computer is being a little finicky, but as you can see, we have our 12-volt circuit here, and if you can see or make up of what that image is doing, that is our starter circuit too. So what's really nice is the starter circuit, regardless if you have an automatic or manual chassis, will bypass the neutral safety switch, and it'll show you all the things that you pretty much need to make your harness all work. And you know, you can print this out on a big piece of paper, view it on an iPad or a bigger display, and that's one of the beauties of this tool. That's pretty much the chassis options feature. I'm going to be adding a ton more chassis throughout the week and focusing on getting this out to you guys so everyone can kind of test it out. I did show you guys, you know, the updating IO feature, how we can pretty much, if you saw, let's say air conditioning over here, it updates the IO in real time, which is pretty rad. And we have a pretty cool cart summary of different connectors that are relevant to our project, alongside with all our sensors and things like that. If you guys are really curious about this tool and how it all works, feel free to check out the previous video demonstrating how this all works. But aside from that, feel free to check out the GitHub page. Hopefully I'll do another update next week on some other features I plan on adding, considering adding things like drive-by-wire and other things of that caliber, and making it a lot easier to add different connectors and things like that, and make it a lot more modular. It is pretty modular in the state it is anyways. But yeah, that's pretty much the second update here on ECUViz. Feel free to check out, if you're a JZX guy, I did post in the group. Feel free to check out this diagram, pretty much showing all the stuff you need, and the GitHub page. All the stars help and the support, and a lot of the positive comments and feedback I've got in the past week have really meant a lot to me. So I'll continue to update you guys on this tool and focus on getting it out to production. But yeah, take it easy. It is my bedtime. Night.